And we are back here on stage, and it's time now to talk about some animation. Because right here with me on stage, we have Markus Engelbrektsson, who is an animator at Ubisoft Massive.
Yes.
And you need no more introduction than that because you're going to do it yourself. So please take it away. Give him a
Okay.
big round of applause.
So, hi, my name is Markus. I've been working as an animator now for 10 years. I'm here to give a presentation about breaking into the industry, some general tips, things like how to prepare for getting your first job, what my journey has been like. It's a bit general, a bit about me. I'm currently working at Ubisoft Massive down in Malmö. I've been there for the last 7 years, so I have some experience. I work mostly with gameplay animation, but I've had a bunch of different roles, NPC, wildlife, cinematics, and also some rigging. I went to school here in Skövde in the game art program, started back in 2007, graduated in 2010. So it's good to be back and say hello to everyone. I worked on a number of different titles, indie, AAA, small teams, medium teams, big studio. And also a little disclaimer, I don't work with recruitment or HR, so I'm not an expert in that part of the industry. So most of my advice is from a personal standpoint, working as a developer. Also, this is mostly related to art and animation. I don't have any general advice for coders, but I do have some specific advice or general advice that will apply to most people. So a bit about what my journey was like and some advice along the way. So in the final semester before graduating, we had to do a bachelor thesis, C-uppsats, about a relevant subject. So my advice is, if you can, try to do this inside a real game company. I did my thesis at a small company in Skövde called Short Fuse Games, which was really a small team of less than 10 people. So what I did was essentially an internship, working full-time on a project they had, which was a beat-em-up game. You would play the undead Elvis character fighting monsters. My thesis was about creating a huge boss for this game, which was a big octopus with flailing tentacles, and yeah, here's that guy. So the experience I had working in a real studio was very valuable, even if the project only got to a vertical slice level before being cancelled, which is something that happens. My advice is don't worry too much if the game you're working on gets cancelled, because you still improve your skills as a developer. And more games than you think gets cancelled. It's just part of the industry. I graduated in 2010, which is just when the economy was starting to come back after the recession in 2008. Some big companies closed down, but not too many studios were hiring back then. So I'd spent another year at the school while working as an intern and taking some extra courses. For example, I took some courses on motion capture, which was not part of the main curriculum. I also did a little work at Stunlock Studios, which is still around. So that's some advice if you're having trouble finding a job right after graduating. Try to use that time to work on your portfolio and maybe take some extra courses. So Shortfuse did not have any projects they could hire me for, so I started applying for work in 2011. So I sent my portfolio to different studios all over the country. And thanks to a classmate I have working at one studio, I got offered a junior position at a small company in Malmö called South End Interactive. It was mostly known for creating a game called Ilo Milo, if you've heard about that. So my advice is don't just apply for jobs in your local area. Sometimes you should be willing to move if needed, so that's what I did. So at South End, which was a small company around 20 people, I worked on another beat-em-up game called Sacred... Oh, that one disappeared, never mind. The game did release, Sacred Citadel was called. The game did release, but it ended up being a bit mediocre. But it was still my first ship title, so overall it was a good experience, and I met a lot of people I still keep in contact with all over the industry. So not every project is going to be your dream project, but you should work hard and keep developing your skills. Also, the value of networking, because one of your old coworkers might end up getting hired somewhere else, and they can recommend you for a position in the future. So Southend ended up with some financial problems in 2013 and is no longer around. So that's when I applied to Ubisoft Massive. They were hiring for a big project they had called the Tom Clancy's The Division. So a lot of Southend employees ended up going there. So if you want to work at a big studio, you can keep an eye out for when they're staffing up for a big project. So that will increase your chances of getting in since there's a lot more demand. This was a much bigger team, around 250 people when I joined, which is now ballooned somewhere around 700. This is a picture of when the team when we released, when we shipped the Division 1 in 2016. So when applying for a bigger studio, your position is going to be much more specialized. So that's something you should prepare for. It's much harder to have a generalist role at a big studio. At Southend, I was doing rigging, animation, implementation, a lot of different roles. At Massive, I started mostly doing motion capture cleanup and NPC animations. So I eventually started working in the cinematics department, which was a lot of fun. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask them later. So after shipping Division 1, which took a few years to work on and doing some post-launch content, I got an opportunity to work on the new South Park game, since they were using our Snowdrop engine that we developed at Massive. Being a fan of the first game, I accepted and thought it was an interesting but challenging project to work on. Did some work on the Division 2, which was much quicker to make thanks to a more experienced team. Before moving on to my current project, which is still under a lot of NDA, so I can't really talk about it, but I can say it's related to James Cameron's Avatar movie. Enough about me. So, what should you do while still studying? So, networking is probably your biggest advantage at a school compared to someone who's just learning by themselves at home. It is super useful when applying for work. You want to keep in touch with your fellow students because you never know if they're going to get hired somewhere, they can recommend you for a position. Because studios will often ask their coworkers like, "Oh, do you know anyone who would be a good fit?" before putting out an ad or hiring a recruiter. You can get a LinkedIn page. It's used a lot in the industry. Even more useful when you already have a work. Go to a conference like this one or volunteer at conferences. I volunteered at the Nordic Game Conference in 2009 and 2010, which was a great experience. Also made me realize Malmö was a pretty nice city despite its reputation. You can go to local meetups. In Malmö, we usually have a game dev meetup every few months when there's not a global pandemic going on. Also, referrals are a big part of the industry, so be friendly, make some new friends. You need to put in the work. So you might think it's enough to just pass your courses and graduate and you'll get a job, but there's a lot of competition for the jobs, and other schools, other students, hobby developers, they're putting in 40 hours per week or more just developing. So discipline is a key aspect to becoming good at anything in my experience. So you need to put in the time, and yeah, I recommend finding some tutorials online and maybe try to finish one every week or so. Make some games. So if you want to work as a game developer, nothing gets you there faster than just making games. Make as many as you can, especially true for game designers. You want to have a variety. You can join game jams, make hobby projects by yourself or with other students. Spend time experimenting with the most common game engines. I would recommend Unity and Unreal Engine. I think probably the most used today, but changes all the time. You can make mods for games you like, make levels for games using level editors, especially if you want to work as a level designer. Also, try to use the resources available to you. So, if you're at a school, this is more applicable. Is there motion capture hardware available? Great for an animator. It's great resources to be familiar with when working in the industry. It can be great for your game project as well. Do you have a passionate teacher, someone you can talk to, someone who has industry experience maybe? You can ask them for feedback on portfolio, put them as a reference when you're looking for work, just make sure they're aware of it. Use the computer lab as a render farm during off hours if you have a project that just needs a bit of extra juice to finish. Use the library to find books related to your craft. Do you have any student licenses for GDC or Pluralsight? Finding some tutorials or talks online is great. Consider learning some coding. Take an intro course or to use an online tool such as Code Academy. I learned a bit of Python, which was really useful for me doing some basic scripting and automation in my career. So if you're a game designer or an audio designer, if you know how to code, that will make you a lot more attractive to an employer. Also, a quick note on graduating. I think you should try to graduate. It shows you can finish what you started. Degrees are not that important in game studios in my experience. They care about your skills and not your grades. But if you ever want to work outside of Sweden or the European Union, having a degree can be a big help in getting a visa. For example, if you want to get work in the US, it's much harder if you don't have a degree. So, getting your first job. Consider doing an internship if that's something you can afford to do. Applying for an internship is a good way to get your foot in the door. It has a much lower barrier to entry. They're usually not paid, but you should, if you do it, make sure it's for a limited time of maybe 2 to 6 months, and it can hopefully lead to a junior position if they like you. If you're under 24, you can also get some financial aid from Arbetsförmedlingen or the Public Employment Agency with something called aktivitetsstöd. That's a little advice. The internship could also be part of your thesis, like I did, which means you would still have access to CSN as well. Some studios will only accept interns if it's part of a school program. So the most important aspect of judging an application is the level of work included. Applications that are sent without a portfolio might get discarded. So this one where you want to put your effort and put your best quality work. Put recent stuff there. Make sure it's not too crowded with everything you've ever produced. I can talk for art and animation, but a basic rule is keeping it short and sweet. Don't make it too long. If you're unsure if something should be there, it's better to leave it out usually. Also, put your best stuff in the beginning of the show reel and try to finish on something strong as well. 3 to 5 shots, probably enough. Biggest source of competition is not going to be your fellow students, it's people already working in the industry, so make sure it's high quality as you can. Also, if you're hosting it on a personal website, try to make the site look good, make it easy to navigate and well presented, especially true if it's for a UI position. So where do you apply for work? Do you want to work in a specific studio, just mobile games, apps, or just any games at all? There are some online resources you can use to find out where the different studios are. Dataspelsbranschen puts out an index every year where they list I think all the game developers in Sweden and where they're located. Or you can also use something like a Facebook group such as Spelutvecklerambulansen, which people put up ads when they're looking to hire. So if you're also looking for a specific company, try to keep an eye on their job site for any updates that get sent. Also, don't be afraid to connect with recruiters on LinkedIn. You can even leave them a polite message and link to your portfolio maybe. So you want to research the company you're sending in before you're sending it. See what type of games they make, and if you can, you should customize your portfolio to match what the studio makes. If they make realistic first-person shooters, don't send in a portfolio with cartoon animals only. This might not get you the job. So when submitting, keep it clear and concise. Employers notice these things. Label files clearly, CV, cover letter, etc. Use the correct name for the company. People make this mistake more often than you think. Also, double check everything. Studios do get messy applications and you don't want to appear careless. It's not a good first look. When you're playing for a junior position, you're likely to get work test with a deadline. Most big studios have their unique test for each position. Deadlines and scope can vary a lot. It could be a couple of days to a couple of weeks. Our test could be a small prop to a whole scene, so it's all over. My advice is don't be late. The test is about how you work under a deadline, so don't mess that up. It's better to hand in something that's unfinished than if you have to. If you can finish early, that could be a bonus as well. Follow the instructions. The test is designed to see how you work with the given limits of the brief. So make sure you understand everything of the brief before you start working on it. Organize your time to make sure you can finish before the deadline. And yeah, try to have some good presentation. Send in a clean file with clear naming conventions. And yeah. So if you get an interview, here's some advice for that. You should do more research on the company. If you can, try to playing their previous games if they've released any. That might come up in the interview. So interviews are like a two-way street. Most interviews I've been involved with have been very like relaxed, informal discussions where you're trying to see if the candidate is a good fit for the studio, but also the candidate want to see if the studio is a good fit for them. You can anticipate some difficult questions they might ask you. Consider what your responses might be. Bringing some questions of your own is a good idea as well. Ask some thoughtful questions you've prepared ahead of time. Specific things like what does the day-to-day responsibilities look like? What's specific things about the studio culture, etc. You will probably be asked questions you did not prepare for, but don't worry too much. If you get a really hard question, try answering very honestly and humble. Like, I don't know, that's a really hard question, but here's my best guess. Because, yeah, honesty and humility goes a long way. Be prepared to talk about the work test if you did one. Don't be defensive. We know the deadlines are tough. Have fun, bring a smile, and good luck. Getting rejected is never fun, but it will happen. So getting your first job in the industry is the hardest one. Sometimes the timing is not good. There's a lot of competition. If you did an art test, you can ask for some polite feedback if you can. A lot of times you're not even going to get a response, but radio silence can be a type of feedback, I guess. Try to have patience. Expecting to get hired right after graduating is likely to do more harm than help you. And yeah, don't give up. Just keep putting in the work, polish the portfolio, and you should get there eventually. Maybe you got the job. Have a beer and celebrate. So what happens after that? You're likely to have been hired as a junior position, or an intern. This means you might have more leeway on more time to finish your tasks, more guidance, so you can become more independent, self-going in the future. So you want to get familiar with the project. That's what you do first when starting. If you're in a pre-production project, it will go pretty fast. But if you're joining during like an alpha push or something, it can take a little bit longer time. This means reading design documents, documentation, studying concept art, watching pre-recorded presentations. If there's a playable build of the game, you should spend some time getting familiar with the game. Also, learn how the different teams and the disciplines work together. Do you work with other animators? Do you work in a team with other designers and programmers as a task force? You want to get familiar with the development tools that are used by the company. Most studios have custom pipeline with custom tools for Maya and Photoshop, how the dialogue system works, how voice lines gets added to the game. Try to get understanding how this works and make an effort to learn how the game engine works as well. Because some studios have a custom game engine that you've never seen before. In my day-to-day job, I spend more than 50% of my time, I think, inside the game engine, just doing node work, implementation, bug fixing, playing the game. So having a good understanding of the tech is important, even if you're an artist. So I wish I could spend more time animating sometimes, but that's just the reality of making games. Another important thing to do is learn the task tracking software, such as Jira or Shotgun. So it's not the most fun part of the job, if you ask me, but maybe you love breakdown charts or you want to be a producer, so that should be your bread and butter. Also learn the version handling software, such as SVN or perforce. You don't want to be the person who checks out the entire project by mistake. That's happened to people I know. Get to know your people in your team and the studio as a whole. Try and learn some new names. Maybe join some non-work activities. Have lunch with your coworkers. Work on those communication skills. If you can, try finding someone who's better than you and willing to mentor you. This would usually be a senior developer who will help you improve your craft as well. Just be open to criticism and learn how to take feedback. Don't stop improving. Sometimes you will get repetitive tasks where it feels like you're not going anywhere. You might have really tight deadlines, so you're never having enough time to polish. Some advice: there's never enough time. Art is never finished, just abandoned. I think Leonardo da Vinci said that. You can watch GDC talks, keep improving your skills outside of work. Find out if the studio has any programs for further education. For example, at Massive, we did some workshops on how to talk to actors when directing a mocap shoot. That was really useful because we go to big mocap shoots all the time, sometimes outside the country, in Canada or other places Ubisoft has studios. Have fun. Working as a developer is a lot of fun. I find it very rewarding. You're constantly growing in your craft, learning new things, meeting passionate people. It's the best job I have ever had. I don't want to work with anything, so no regrets. Just some quick takeaways as well. I keep bringing networking up, but it's super important. It's how I got my first job, and same is true for a lot of people I know in the industry. Presenting your best work is all about choosing the work that represents the job you're trying to get, and also put your best stuff there. Don't put everything there. The industry is constantly evolving, and new tools and techniques are being put out all the time. Don't get comfortable with things you already know. Be hungry for learning new things, developing your craft. If you can learn one game engine really well, learning a second one is a lot faster because they're mostly similar at the core. They're just different user interfaces. So that's all I had. Thank you hopefully I should have some time left. So any questions?
First, we can give a little bit round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for a really great talk.
Yeah, thanks.
So I see already we have some questions that are coming in from Discord. Even if you're in this audience here physically, you can ask your questions on Discord, and I will see them, and I will give you the questions to you. What if there is no game industry? What if there is no game industry in your country? Oh, I read company first. I was like, how does that work? What if there is no game industry in your country? What do you do then? How do you go about?
I would probably apply to other countries, of course, or you can get work as a freelancer. That can be a good first job as well, getting some experience, just working it remotely, which I think a lot of people are doing these days.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great time, right? We are learning how to work more remotely, so maybe that's an opportunity.
But then, yeah, if you can, if you're in the European Union, you can work in any country in the European Union, for example. So that helps. If you're outside of that, I don't know. Try finding somewhere you like, and apply for a visa.
Next question: if having a portfolio is a must, even if you have. Is having a portfolio a must, even if you have experience as a programmer?
So, I don't think coders or programmers need a portfolio in the same way. It can be good to show games you've been working on. You don't want to show like all your code you've ever done, because no one is going to read that. I'm not an expert on coding, so I can't really talk too much about how that works.
We had that question a little bit coming up earlier today, and my experience, sorry for taking over your limelight, but my experience is that for programmers it's more about the test that you get, the work samples that you make after you actually come to the interview and stuff like that, and also the interview in itself is maybe more important.
Yeah, I think so.
Because you have to show your logic and stuff like that.
Yeah, but if you worked on different games, try showing samples of the games in a show reel or something, if you can.
Yeah, definitely. How do you get internships while in high school?
Oh, I think that can be very hard. That would probably be for a shorter amount of time. I don't know any high school students in any companies I've ever worked. Usually we want everyone to be over 18 years old when starting. So you probably have to have a lot of contacts if you want to get an internship while in high school. Maybe your dad works at a company or something.
All right. Thank you. That's all of the time that we have. But you are popping into the studio now,
Yes.
right?
Is there any questions from the audience or no?
I think if you pop into Discord afterwards,
Yeah.
we can answer the final
Okay,
questions.
thank you.
So I will let you slink over to the studio because it is time to. And thank you so much again for your great talk. Of course, another round of applause, I think, from the studio here. Thanks. But yeah, so it's time to switch over to the studio where we will keep talking to an amazing panel of cool people in there. So thank you so much and see you soon.
Yeah, thanks Anna for that. And thanks Markus, who will we will welcome to the studio right now actually. Hi Markus, welcome. This panel is about animators and how to make it in the industry as an animator, and also talking a bit about reels and how you should manage your reel to make it real interesting for potential jobs out there. So I was thinking we would start with Lena. Present yourself to our magnificent audience.
Hello. I'm Lena and I work as a lead animator at Pieces Interactive in Skövde. And right now we're working on something secret.
As always in the games industry.
Exactly. What more can I say? I've worked at Pieces for 4.5 years, and I went to the University of Skövde game development program as animator there.
And there's a familiar face which we've seen before.
Yeah, I'll introduce myself again. I'm Atle Fägersten. I'm the producer and studio manager at Palindrome Interactive, former animator and studied animation here in University of Skövde as well.
Yeah. And a familiar face as well.
Yes, I'm Markus. I'm been working as an animator for 10 years. I'm currently at Ubisoft Massive here in Sweden. I studied also here in Skövde, but it was called the Game Art program back then. I don't think we had an animation-specific program.
Yeah. And Lena, how did you get into your current job? You've been there 4.5 years, you said. What was that process like when you first got the job?
Actually, I just applied. I didn't think I would get it. I just applied for fun of it and to get some experience. Like, how do you get into the process? What do you need to do? How do you need to contact the company and everything? And then I was called on an interview, and then I was offered a job, and I was I wasn't even done with my school yet. So should I take it? Of course I should take it. So my first the last half year. What do you say? For half a year, I was working 50% at Pieces and wrote my candidate bachelor thesis.
Yeah. Right. So you split between. How was that splitting? Your first job with probably the most intense of your of your education.
Yeah, it was fine. I put the bar on my thesis quite low. I wanted to make it and focus on the job. And Pieces was just between 2 projects then, so it wasn't so much to do there. So it was fine.
Good timing, I guess. Then.
Yeah, really good timing.
And Atle, you spoke before on stage about your current job, but back in the days when you were starting out as an animator, how did you start to get into the industry?
Well, I guess I started my own job. We started our company, and I guess the way we got into that position, we were a group of students who were connected on an idea of a game studio and what it could be, and we felt that we're going to need an animator, and we've been working together for almost a year at that point, so it became logical just continue working together.
Yeah, but your background and your studies is as an animator.
Yeah, right. Correct.
Yeah, and Markus, you mentioned that you had been in the industry for a while now.
Yes.
And that the education looked a bit different back then. How was it for you starting out in the industry?
So I had a similar to Lena, where I did my bachelor thesis at a small company here in Skövde called Short Fuse Games. So I did that working as an intern full-time and doing my bachelor thesis at the same time. So that was a good experience to get some work experience, but the project ended up getting cancelled, so I had to apply for job work elsewhere. And thanks to a contact I made in school, I got offered a position at a studio down in Malmö called South End Games.
Yeah.
So that's how I got my first job.
Yeah. So as many people have spoken about on this couch before, it's like contact and sometimes also chance that gets you into a job. But when you're into the actual job, how does a day look like for you? I mean, not everyone has a insight of how an animator works. What do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, so we're just like when I started, there was just me actually, and then we became 2 animators, and now we're 3.
Yeah.
So it's always been like a little bit of all. It's rigging and animating and finding references and like the full spectra,
Yeah.
actually. So it depends on the planning. Have we just gotten a new character? We need to like set up a rig and find references and test poses and just start with the first iteration.
Yeah.
And then later on, it's just of polish, lots of polish work and test stuff in game and
but
everything.
It's quite a mechanics heavy job, isn't it? Like crafting a lot of stuff, isn't it? For those not familiar with animation.
Yeah, for the rigs, it's a lot of like problem solving and you have to think it through a lot. Like how should it work in the end?
Yeah.
But the animation part of it is more creative then.
Yeah.
So you can just like play around and test the rigs and test if they work or if you have to like redo them and stuff.
But you find that it's there's a contrast between those two, rigging and animating. Like it's, I don't know if it's a stereotype, but usually like creative people are not as good at planning and like problem solving and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's a kind of a contrast.
I struggle a bit with planning. I don't know. Yeah, it's a contrast, and you have to be like adaptive. And if it's a small company, at least. On larger ones, I guess. I don't know, how many are you? Like
We're around 700 now.
Oh.
So
not 700
we have
animators.
people. We have a team of animators, and since I started my career doing all my own rigs, but since I started working at Ubisoft, that's been less and less so because usually I have a team dedicated to just making the rigs. So I'm full-time animating now, I guess.
Nice.
And
is that like a bonus for you, or is it just like something different, or is it like is it like a step up for you to only have to do the actual animation?
Well, I would love to spend more time animating actually, because as an animator working on gameplay animation, which I do right now, you spend 50% of your time inside a game engine.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of technical work, just playtesting, bug fixing, node work, all that, like polishing, all that thing. So I wish I could spend more time animating sometimes, but it's part of game development.
And working with animators, how does your daily job with regards to that look like, Atle?
Well, yeah, we're a small studio as well, so I think it's similar to what Lena explained. It's you do everything really as a single animator in a team, and that has benefits that you can control a lot of the style of the game and how it's animated, and you get to do all of the fun animations.
Yeah.
But it also comes with the rigging and implementation, which some people may not find as interesting if they feel that they are a dedicated animator and only want to do the character animations and monster animations. In a small studio like ours, you'll have to do everything, which some see as a benefit and others see as a curse.
Yeah. And do you have a example like of games that do animation like top of the class, like highest quality? What games pop into your mind when I ask that question? Do you have a favorite?
I think recently The Last of Us 2 is a really good example where they use motion matching, motion capture, and keyframe animation all in a blend in a way.
Yeah.
So, but that game took a lot of effort to make, I'm sure.
Some and some amount of money, I guess, as well. Do you have any favorites?
I would throw the latest God of War into that category as well. That's one of the who does a lot of things similar to Last of Us, but kind of a few years earlier. And I was really impressed with how much they provide just character moments simply through animation and without voice acting. The way Kratos just looks at boy at occasions.
And you, Lena, do you have
I agree with God of War. It's very beautiful and very cinematic, and I loved how they handle the camera in God of War. Just as one cinematic take, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Could you point to a single thing that you, as an animator, think is the most important thing to nail when animating a character? Like, what are you striving for? Like, when are you most satisfied with your own work? Like, when the character acts in a certain way, or like?
Yeah, well, when it becomes alive, like it's very hard to give it life.
Yeah.
And a lot of creativity in that process can't really, like, it doesn't allow to be take as much time as it maybe have to do in a game project, because it's always like moving on to the next character and testing things, and things are changing all the time, and sometimes the full picture of a character can't really
be realized.
Yeah, in a way that you can do in a movie maybe. So I think that's like. Yeah.
And is it a frustrating part of being an animator that you sometimes maybe don't have the time, as I mean, to spend on your babies as you would like?
You want to polish it more, but there's no time really.
No.
There's never enough time.
I think that's a curse for all artists, and especially maybe in the game industry. There's always someone waiting down the line to take your work forward. So you have to
but everybody notices like
quickly.
ugly animations.
So a good animation, no one's gonna notice it because it just flows naturally.
It's like a referee in a sports game. If you don't notice it, it's that's the mark of a good one. Right. But how long? That's an off-topic question, maybe. But how long do you think you could spend on say for a typical project for you, on if you had like unlimited amount of time and resources, which is not the case, obviously, like on a single character, until you felt like now it's perfect. Now it's alive, and it's like I can't do anything more to the animations.
Did I have unlimited amount of time?
Could you spend unlimited? I mean, there has to come a point where you. How long would you like to have if you would on a single character?
It depends on the
style.
The style and what you aim for. Is it cartoony or very realistic, or like a cartoony character can. I think it's easier to animate cartoony characters because you could just like push it and do whatever you want, kind of. But
people don't have that perceived like it should look like this or like as realistic stuff.
I mean, that's where motion capture comes in. I think sometimes when you're trying to make realistic stuff, it can help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you could spend an infinite amount of time. Basically, it's what you're saying on realistic. Animations.
It depends on like what the character needs to do. Should he just like walk around and fight, or should he like climb and like interact with the environment a lot? So a lot of tech comes in. And
I think in the old Disney animated movies, the artist got somewhere around a week for every few seconds of animation they created. So animation takes a lot of time if you want to make it perfect.
And that's not the luxury you always have in game development, as you said.
I think also that's one of the driving points to make game development fun and animating for games more fun. You need to know that, all right, I need to get this done as quickly as possible, and you figure out, all right, what corners can I cut? And it comes into that problem-solving aspect that we talked about. It's all about making it just good enough that no one's going to notice that this is bad, and it doesn't need to be better than it needs to be. I mean, for Immortal Realms, we're so far away from our characters, so the animation doesn't be like, all right, he has to bend his fingers completely accurately to grab the sword, and his toes need to be positioned correctly when he's running. It's like, no one's going to see that, so you can simplify those parts and move on and create more variation in animations instead of focusing down on one run cycle.
Right, that's interesting as well, And for people watching who are interested in becoming an animator, probably maybe studying to become an animator, would you prefer a reel or a portfolio to present your work?
I've started more and more preferring portfolios with each clip separated, and the more you can link to an art station, the better, in my opinion, because that's what more and more artists are adapting. It's become what recruiters are more and more used to looking at. So I think an art station where you can have the clip that you want as a video, and then have some pictures explaining, right, this is the rig I used, this is this and this, and going through the thought process a little bit more than just staring, here's an animation.
Yeah, I think on ArtStation you can link like FBXs, so you can actually like play the animations and rotate them and look at them in all directions and stuff. And that's really impressive. Like you really show the full animation and just not just your selected angle.
You're right. The full reality of the situation, not only the best selfie picture you've taken. Right. And for you, Marcus?
I'm a bit more traditional. I like show reels, but should just make them not too long, short. 3 to 5 clips is enough.
Right.
Just put your best quality stuff there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And what's a good reel or portfolio look like? What is do's and don'ts? What's your what are you looking for in a good portfolio reel, and what is some major problems or pitfalls people fall down in?
I like if they have a bit of a personal touch, so don't put just generic walk cycles and bouncing balls. I want to see something about what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I would agree. A lot of people have the base animations that everyone is expected to understand, but as someone that looks at a lot of animation, you know when that's there and not there, so you don't need to see the bouncing ball example. You can see if someone has the basics nailed down already. So I think, and showing what what kind of animation you wanna work with. We get some animation that is a little bit of everything, and it's like, all right, here's a generalist, and here's someone that's only doing monsters, and then we know, like, all right, this is already what this guy is aiming for to do, and we know that, all right, are we going to be working with this kind of monsters or animation in the future, or are we leaning more towards motion capture in this project? Getting that first view into what this animator is passionate about, only looking at the portfolio, is really nice.
Yeah. And is that something to think about when putting together your portfolio reel, like that it's good to show some kind of width or breadth in your work, or is it more a question about what you would like to do and show what you are interested in? What would you say? Is it smart to have generalist stuff in there, or?
Depends a lot on what type of work you're looking for. If it's for a smaller studio, I think that's a lot more valuable. If you're trying to work in a big studio, try to have a bit more focus.
I think it's good to show that you know rigging, even though you're focusing on your animation, because it just shows that you.
I agree.
I think showing an understanding of that you're searching for a game development animation role and not a movie animation role is showing that you have actually understanding of, right, I haven't just filmed this in Maya as a playblast, I've implemented it in Unreal or Unity, and I'm playing the animations there and recording.
Right. How's that? Are there a lot of people working in games animation that are not necessarily gamers or passionate about games, more so than in other fields of the game industry? Do you think?
Sorry, what?
I mean, are there more people in animation working who are not necessarily gamers themselves, or could just as work in movie making, as you said, or is it still most of the people are really passionate about games who are animators?
Yeah, all animators I've known play games.
All right.
So I'm not sure, but I guess maybe. I think it's a bit. It's different though, like movies and games, because of this that you can just choose what to show in movies. I've seen some behind the scene clips from different animated movies, and when you rotate the camera, everything is just so weird. But just from this angle, it's perfect. So.
Yeah. I don't think I've met any game animator that isn't also into games.
Right. So it's really separate disciplines. Is what you're saying. As you said, animating for movies is not necessarily something I can also animate for games or whatever. It's
no. There's definitely overlap in the basics of animation, but then there's so many like things that are not the same that you can't really, they don't translate one to one.
Yeah.
Leading into that, like people studying to become animators, do you think it's good to be, as we spoke about before, broad, or should you focus in on some certain style that you enjoy, or like character specifically, or like how should you think about that when you are studying?
I think you should definitely focus if you want to be a 2D or a 3D artist. I think it's hard to do both. But I think if your first year, when you're just trying everything out, I think you should try to be as broad as possible to find where your passion is. Maybe even try stop motion and stuff like this to see what types of animations you think is most fun, and then find where your passion is and focus a bit more on that.
Yeah, that's really important to just do what you like the most, because that shows in your reel when there is passion and inspiration, or if it's just like a bouncing ball, because it doesn't have life or it's not interesting.
And did you find that your passion within animation quickly, or did it grow over time, or how was it for you?
I was very new to animation when I started. I've done like stop motion animation before and 2D animation just for fun. But I started 3D animation when I started at the Skövde University, and it was awesome. And well, everybody loves to like animate monsters. I feel like it's everyone's like favorite. But yeah, like I don't know. I found it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you?
Yeah, as well. I hadn't really animated at all before I started. I did some basic 3D modeling and for to see like, all right, what's the next step? And I felt the animation was a bit more bringing things to life in a way. And I think for some people, it's you find a passion and like this is the one thing I want to focus on, and for others, it's the entire aspect of taking it from model to rig to animate to implement, and for others, just very specific.
And for you, Markus, did you find your passion within animation quickly, or did it grow?
I think it grew a lot over time, because I started with doing keyframe animation, and then I started taking some motion capture courses, and I really fell in love with that format as well. So I've done both in my career, and I found it to be a valuable asset too.
Yeah, and you touched on mocap before as well. How relevant is that today in the industry?
I think it's getting used more and more every year.
Yeah.
It's getting more affordable, and there's we for example at Massive we have some Xsense suits, which is a camera-less motion capture system that if we sometimes just want to block something out, we can just put on the suits, record something real quick, and put it in Maya or Motion Builder, and build it from there. So it's sort of like filming yourself, but putting yourself in a game.
We have one of those too. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
And it's looking at it from the outside, I know next to nothing about animation. Maybe it showed already, but like looking from the outside, is there an aspect of not looking at mocap as much as an art as animating by hand, or if you see what I mean?
Yeah, there is. I think there is still that. What do you call it?
Like stigma or
stigma, against mocap. I know some artists that really don't like doing motion capturing work because they feel they're like pure.
Like a cheapens experience. Or
keyframe animators, but I think it's a necessary evil to learn.
Yeah,
and I like it, so it's a lot faster to get stuff in the game.
Yeah, I guess it's about being effective as well.
Yeah,
I mean, money is always an issue, and time is always an issue in development. So
and of course, I mean, we talked about God of War or The Last of Us. Those games are heavily motion captured with one actor playing Kratos the entire game. And you really sell the actors' nuances as well, I think.
Yeah, I think if we're looking for realism, it's the closest and most effective way of getting close to real performances. I mean, you can do that with keyframe animations as well, but the timing will require to make a full to animate the face for that much and that precise is.
And for 2D animation, then where are we at with that? Like, are there any leaps in the tech, or like how is that part of the the animation business looking?
I have no idea.
No,
I'm not
same,
working
actually.
with
Yeah.
2D.
So you are like all in 3D.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
there are some cool 2D games coming out every year. I'm
Yeah.
constantly
Yeah.
fascinated. I recently played Hollow Knight, which was blew my mind with how they get away with the animations they do. It's
Oh, nice.
super pretty to look at.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I would say I don't think it's anywhere away from going away or dying. I think, as you mentioned, Hollow Knight and now Hades
Exactly.
recently as well.
Oh, that's a 3D game actually.
That's true. But there's so many games
There
that do the balance between, I guess, 2D and 3D and
Yeah.
just emulating it in a way. I think whenever these games that come out that are truly gorgeous 2D animated games, they always make a big splash for being really pretty. So I think it's not going away in any way.
yeah, or in the Blind Forest as well recently, or
Yeah,
in the Will of the Wisp.
Yeah.
I mean, was
Yeah.
also like really striking when you played it. How
Yeah, it's James Benson is the animator on that. I think he's really talented.
Yeah. But what was the biggest surprise for you when you started out working in the industry?
Well, it's just normal people working in the industry. Like when I went to school, I was just like meeting all game developers on conferences and stuff, and I didn't really. I thought they were like. It's weird to be there myself now because I don't see myself now as I saw them then. So like, don't just come up and speak to people, and it's just normal people working in the industry, and it's just everybody's nice. And
But were you starstruck back then by like people
Yeah.
working in development?
yeah, I were like talk to animators and on larger companies and so and I was really nervous and Star Trek, and yeah, it's just cool guys.
Yeah. And for you, what's the biggest surprise?
I think the amount of effort that actually goes into both making games in general and just animation for games as well, in the entire process of rigging, animating, implementing, and making sure it works and looks good. It's a lot more than you realize when you're doing assignments one by one and maybe just focusing on the animation at one point, just focusing on the rigging in another, but making all of that come together with sound designers and the tech artists and the designers.
It's a lot of work on a lot of ends.
Yeah.
To get it together. Yeah.
For me, it's a few things. One thing is how much NDAs and secrecy there is in this industry. Because when you're a student, you can always talk about what projects you're working on, but when you're starting in this industry, you go to a game meetups, you're like, oh, what are you working on? Oh, I can't tell you. Oh, I can't tell you either. Oh.
Okay, nice talking.
What should we talk about? Yeah. And also, what was it? I wrote something down. How hard it can be to immerse yourself when playing games.
Right, yeah.
Because you get,
Oh yeah.
you're constantly analyzing
Good
everything.
damage from working with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
that surprised me a bit.
Yeah, and that's something I can relate to as well, but from another point of view. But yeah, do you ever feel like God's creating your your creation? Like you're creating them from scratch to something that actually moves and have a life.
Yeah.
How is your your relationship to the things you create? Is it like, as I said before, is it your little babies, or does it become more like? Do you become more numb over time and like?
Yeah, it's very rewarding, and I love the cooperation between the disciplines. And like I can just like go into the office next door where all the programmers sit and ask them for stuff, and they fix it, and we just cooperate, and then we give birth to a game together, like everybody. So the game is my baby.
Yeah, not a single like characters or animations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're running out of time, but can you just mention one tip for aspiring artists? What would you say to people aspiring to become an animator?
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Try to get an internship if you want to get work in the industry. I think I know a lot of people who got their first job after an internship, so that's what I would recommend for aspiring.
Put a lot of energy into getting a good internship at the place where you want to work.
Yeah, also make sure it's time limited, so you don't end up working forever without pay.
For free, yeah. That's a good tip. Yeah,
I would say check out Markus' talk. I think he nailed most of the points. I think the important ones are contacts, making sure you put yourself out there. Your work can be super great, but it's not going to matter if no one sees it and no one knows who you are. So you need to make good work and make sure to share that work with other people, and then you're going to make it.
Yeah, and have passion for games in general, I think, and for your discipline. It shows when you apply for a job that you love animation in your reel or portfolio or whatever you do. So, yeah.
Thanks for that, and thanks for sharing all of your experience and all of your thoughts on that.